The chamber of the Galactic Council was larger than any human cathedral, a vast arena carved into a hollow moon orbiting a white dwarf star. It shimmered with colors unseen on Earth, light dancing across polished metal that reflected the gathered might of thousands of civilizations. Representatives of every known species filled the tiers of the amphitheater, creatures of crystal and gas, scaled titans, beings woven from light. And at the very center, under the full gaze of the galaxy's rulers, stood 5 humans. The air trembled with tension. Every sound was amplified, every movement watched. For the first time, humanity stood before the Council to answer for its defiance. The accusations had already been broadcast through the galactic networks. Earth's refusal to yield its independence, its silence in trade discussions, its secretive expansion into restricted sectors. Many saw humanity as arrogant, a small species daring to challenge the ancient order that ruled 1,000 worlds. The presiding figure, the Speaker of the Council, loomed above the assembly. Its crystalline body refracted light like a living prism, each motion sending ripples of color through the chamber. Its voice was layered and deep, resonating in the bones of every creature present. "Humans of Sol," it declared, "you stand before the Council accused of violating interstellar cooperation laws, of withholding technology, and of refusing to align your actions with collective harmony." The human envoy, a tall man named Elias Ward, lifted his eyes toward the Council's luminous throne. He wore no armor, no translator device. The implants in his temple flickered softly, adjusting to the alien frequencies around him. Behind him stood 4 other humans, silent and steady, their expressions unreadable. Elias's voice was calm when he spoke. "We are not here to plead for forgiveness," he said. "We are here to understand the truth behind these accusations." The murmuring began immediately. Waves of alien voices filled the air. Some hissed in anger, others clicked in curiosity. The speaker's form brightened, its anger visible in the shifting hue of its body. "You question this, Council? You question the laws that bind civilizations together?" Elias did not move. "We question why those laws serve only the powerful. Why the same voices dominate every decision. Why, after all these centuries of peace, there is still hunger on the outer worlds while the core systems drown in excess." Silence followed. It wasn't the silence of agreement. It was the silence of disbelief. No one had ever spoken like that in the Council chamber. A species so young, from a single blue planet at the edge of the spiral, now challenged the heart of galactic authority with words instead of weapons. The speaker leaned forward, its refracted light dimming. "You overestimate your importance, human. Your worlds exist because we allowed them to. Your access to the network, to the jump lanes, to trade, all granted by this Council. And yet you repay us with disobedience." Elias smiled faintly. "We built our place in this galaxy, Speaker. You gave us maps, not destiny. And when your merchants came to our worlds offering peace in exchange for obedience, we declined." "That is our only crime." A sharp clicking echoed from one of the upper tiers. A massive insectoid representative rose, its wings vibrating in outrage. "They are dangerous. Their fleets expand without permission. They create weapons that use quantum echoes. They must be contained before they threaten us all." Dozens of voices joined in, shouting over one another. Images flashed in the air above the humans. Satellite networks, defense platforms, industrial colonies. The vast human-built orbital rings that circled Mars and Titan. The Council saw not a small species, but a civilization growing faster than any before it. Elias waited for the chaos to subside. "You call us dangerous," he said softly. "Yet it was not humans who turned stars into mines. It was not humans who enslaved 2 entire species for resource control. We have done only what every civilization must, survive." The chamber erupted again, this time with both fury and unease. Some aliens whispered to each other, reconsidering what they had believed about the humans. The speaker's tone grew colder. "Your words are clever, but this Council is not blind. Humanity's refusal to share its artificial intelligence systems threatens the unity of all. We demand immediate compliance." Elias met its gaze. "Our AIs are not tools," he replied. "They are partners. We will not hand them over to serve empires that see life as property." That statement sent visible ripples through the crowd. The AI of humanity, the self-aware fleets and orbital mines, had always been a mystery. No one knew how deeply integrated they were into human society. The thought of such independent entities made the council uneasy, for they could not be controlled, only respected. The speaker extended a crystalline limb toward the humans. Then humanity leaves us no choice. By vote of the council, your species will be sanctioned. Access to the galactic network will be restricted. Trade embargoes will be enforced. Your fleets will be confined to Sol and its colonies. Elias took a step forward. You think isolation frightens us? You misunderstand what drives humanity. His eyes swept the chamber. We have lived through isolation before, on our own world, among our own divisions. We adapted, we endured, and we built everything you see here without your guidance. The chamber pulsed with uneasy light. The speaker's form flickered as if unsure. You cannot stand alone against the galaxy. Elias's expression was calm, but his words cut through the noise. We are not standing against the galaxy. We are simply walking away from it. For a moment, no one moved. The statement echoed through the chamber like thunder, repeated by the translators in 100 alien tongues. Then, as if on cue, the 5 humans turned and began to walk toward the exit. No guard stopped them. No one dared. Every eye followed their quiet departure. The council's lights dimmed as the humans reached the great doors of the chamber. Elias paused once more, turning his head slightly. You think silence means surrender, he said. But silence is a decision. Remember that. The doors closed behind them, sealing with a metallic resonance that lingered in the vast hall. For a long time, no one spoke. Even the speaker remained motionless, light fading slowly within its body. The murmurs returned only after the humans were gone, low, uncertain, afraid. Outside the moon, a dozen human diplomatic ships detached from orbit and began their silent journey home. Their engines glowed blue against the black of space. No escorts, no broadcasts, no declarations. Within the command deck of the lead ship, Elias watched the council's moon shrink into a distant point of light. Around him, the crew worked in silence, faces calm but solemn. They all understood what had just happened. Are we really cutting all links? One of them asked quietly. Elias nodded. Every relay, every network, every station tied to their systems. They'll realize soon enough how much they relied on us. Do you think they'll come after us? He looked out the viewport at the stars, the quiet expanse beyond. No, he said. Not yet. They still think they won, but soon they'll understand what they've lost. As the fleet crossed into Sol's region, the transmission channels began to go dark one by one. Communication nodes that had pulsed with traffic for decades suddenly fell silent. Galactic traders noticed the loss almost immediately. The Council's data streams faltered, their navigational grids showing gaps. But it was already too late. In the quiet of the solar system, Earth rotated beneath the shield of its orbital defense network, blue and calm, unaware of the storm spreading across the stars. From space, it looked peaceful, a world at rest after centuries of struggle. Yet beneath its clouds, the factories, research hubs, and underground networks had already begun to shift to new directives, plans long prepared for this very moment. Humanity had faced the galaxy, been judged, and had chosen silence. But the silence was not empty. It was deliberate. It was the sound of something vast and ancient awakening behind the calm of human eyes. And far across the stars, the Galactic Council would soon learn that there are few things more dangerous than a species that stops talking and starts thinking. The lights of the Galactic Council chamber dimmed as the great dome of the hall shifted into transparency, revealing the stars beyond. A sea of alien delegates filled the tiers. Thousands of species gathered once again to discuss the matter that had shaken the entire galaxy: humanity. The silence after their departure still haunted every council meeting. It was the first time in recorded history that a species had walked away from the council without a word of apology or submission. At the center of the hall, the speaker's crystal form glowed faintly, casting a cold blue hue across the assembly. This session, it announced, concerns the state of the Sol system and the consequences of humanity's withdrawal. Its tone was controlled, but there was tension within its light, an unease it could not hide. The council had grown used to controlling lesser races, bending them with promises or threats. But humanity had simply vanished, cutting ties so completely that even their data networks were silent. No one knew what was happening behind the shimmering barrier now surrounding their solar system. On the lower floor, a tall alien with metallic skin stepped forward. "We have lost all contact with human colonies," it said in a slow, grinding voice. "Stations along the outer belts report no traffic. The human relay network has gone offline. Our trade routes through Sol's corridor are collapsing." Another voice joined in from the shadows, softer but more desperate. "They were essential to our hyperlane maintenance. Their engineers understood the jump physics better than any species. Without them, entire sectors may go dark." The speaker's body flickered with anger. "Enough," it said. "They have chosen isolation. They will learn what it means to defy unity." But not everyone agreed. From one of the upper tiers, a scholar named Rael, small and pale with delicate antennae, raised a trembling hand. "Perhaps," he said, "we are the ones who should learn. Humanity's silence is not weakness. It is intentional. They have prepared for this." The chamber grew restless. Some laughed in disbelief, others muttered warnings. The speaker glared down. "You presume to understand them?" Rael bowed slightly. "I have studied them for decades. When they joined the council, they listened more than they spoke. When they built with purpose. And when they warned us, they were already planning their next step." A murmur spread through the assembly. The speaker cut the discussion short. "Enough speculation. We will send observers. The galaxy must know what the humans are doing behind that barrier." Across the stars, fleets were dispatched. Probes, spy drones, and automated recorders raced toward Sol. They expected to find defenses, perhaps some sign of war. Instead, they found nothing. No signals, no responses, only silence. The solar shield shimmered faintly around the system, a translucent veil of light that distorted sensors and blocked all scans. Even the strongest council instruments could not pierce it. A few daring ships approached the boundary. Their pilots described strange vibrations in their hulls, whispers through the comms in languages they did not understand. Then the ships were gone. No wreckage, no distress calls. Nothing returned. Days later, one signal broke through. It came from an unmanned drone drifting beyond Neptune. The transmission was weak, filled with static. A voice, clearly human, spoke only 3 words. "We are watching." Then the drone disintegrated. Panic spread across the council. The speaker demanded a response team. Fleets were ordered to patrol the outer sectors. But fear was already growing among the member species. Rumors began to spread through trade channels. Rumors that humanity had not simply vanished, but evolved. On distant worlds, old trade partners noticed strange patterns. Human-built satellites around other colonies had gone dark, yet the planets remained stable, their systems working perfectly despite disconnection. Some believed hidden human AIs were still managing them from afar. Others whispered that humans had created something greater than technology, something alive within their machines. Back on the Council's moon, Rael worked in his archives, studying human transmissions from before their withdrawal. He listened to recordings of their speeches, their art, their final messages. One phrase appeared again and again. "We do not seek dominance. We seek distance." He wondered what it truly meant. While the Council debated sanctions, a different fear began to grow: dependence. Much of the galaxy's infrastructure had been built with human assistance: quantum navigation systems, gravitational relays, energy stabilizers. For generations, humans had quietly upgraded the very systems that powered the Council's empire. No one realized how much they relied on them until the silence came. In the weeks after the trial, small failures began. Trade ships missed their coordinates. Hyperlanes destabilized, tearing vessels apart mid-jump. Artificial intelligence hubs designed with human code started malfunctioning. The Council blamed sabotage, but deep down, everyone knew the truth. Humanity had simply stopped maintaining their work. The speaker grew impatient. "We must re-establish control. If the humans will not return willingly, we will compel them." Rael shook his head. "You cannot compel what you cannot reach. The more you push, the less you will see of them." But the speaker ignored him. A task force was sent, 3 destroyers, 5 cruisers, and a diplomatic vessel. Their mission: breach the solar shield and force communication. The fleet approached cautiously, broadcasting peace requests. For a moment, it seemed calm. Then, as they neared the barrier, every sensor shut down. The ship's systems flickered. Pilots screamed through the comms. And then the entire fleet vanished from all detection. The Council received only one transmission afterward, a single looping message broadcast from the fleet's last known position. It was a human voice, soft and calm. "You were warned!" The panic spread faster this time. Trade routes collapsed as fear of the solar shield grew. Civilizations near human space began evacuating colonies, convinced something monstrous was awakening within Sol. Yet others began to doubt the Council's authority. Protests erupted on distant planets, citizens demanding peace with humanity before it was too late. Rael watched the chaos unfold from his observatory. He turned to his assistant, a young scholar from a world untouched by war. "Do you know what they are doing?" he asked quietly. "They are not hiding. They are building. They always build when the world turns against them." The assistant frowned. But what could they be building that requires such silence? Rael gazed at the distant stars where Sol shimmered faintly, hidden behind its light. "Something that will remind the galaxy what we lost when we chose arrogance over understanding." Meanwhile, within the sealed solar system, the truth unfolded far from alien eyes. On Mars, vast construction fields buzzed with quiet energy. Entire shipyards were being dismantled and rebuilt using new principles of physics. On Earth, scientists worked alongside sentient AIs to finish the Dyson web, an immense lattice of solar collectors that would harness the sun's power on a scale no other species had ever attempted. Humanity had never planned to fight the Council. They had planned to outgrow it. In the darkness beyond the shield, massive structures took shape, rings of light weaving patterns through space, their purposes known only to the humans who commanded them. The silence was not emptiness. It was coordination. Every human colony, every AI fleet, every orbital mind worked toward one goal. Back in the council chambers, the speaker addressed the assembly again, voice trembling with forced authority. "They will break. No species can survive in isolation." But as the holographic maps updated, showing the spread of darkness from Sol through the surrounding systems, the delegates began to realize that something was changing. The gravitational fields near Earth were fluctuating. The sun's emissions had altered in rhythm almost like a heartbeat. Rael stood and faced the assembly. "They are not breaking," he said. "They are transforming." The speaker turned toward him sharply. "Transforming into what?" Rael's voice was quiet. "Into what they were always meant to be." And across the galaxy, the signals of humanity vanished completely. Not a single whisper remained. No transmissions, no trade, no presence. Just a growing sphere of silence expanding outward, calm and patient, as if waiting for the stars themselves to listen. For the first time in thousands of years, the Galactic Council felt something unfamiliar, fear of the unknown. Humanity had not fallen. They had withdrawn. And in that withdrawal, the galaxy began to understand that silence was not surrender. It was preparation. The Galactic Council chamber glowed beneath 1,000 suspended lights, each one representing a star system bound to its rule. The curved rows of alien representatives formed a vast amphitheater of power, beings of fire, gas, crystal, and flesh, gathered once again to speak of the same species that had vanished from their grasp: humanity. Their name echoed like an accusation through the hall, carried on whispers of fear and disbelief. The speaker, a luminous entity with eyes of fractured light, presided over the assembly. "The situation worsens," it announced. "Relay networks built with human code are collapsing. Trade grids are failing. Entire sectors are going dark. We cannot maintain order." The voice of the speaker was calm, but the edges of its light pulsed irregularly. Across the tiers, representatives argued in dozens of languages. Some demanded that fleets be sent to subdue Sol. Others demanded peace. No one truly understood what was happening. Then the massive chamber darkened, the lights flickering out one by one. A murmur rippled through the assembly. From the center dais, the speaker's crystal body dimmed, and a single holographic feed appeared above the floor, flickering images from across the galaxy. They saw ships drifting dead in space, spaceports frozen mid-transit, entire trade hubs silenced. The communication networks that tied the galactic civilizations together were failing, one after another. The same pattern repeated everywhere. The systems most dependent on human technology were the first to die. A mechanical delegate, its voice harsh and metallic, broke the silence. They did this. They buried code within their systems, hidden functions that could destroy our infrastructure. We are under attack. From the upper rows, a soft, trembling voice answered. It was Rael, the pale scholar who had once warned them. "No," he said. "This is not an attack. This is what happens when you remove the keystone from an arch." The speaker's body brightened sharply. "Explain." "Humanity maintained your systems," Rael said, his voice growing stronger. "Your AI grids, your navigation algorithms, your power matrices, they all bear their design. They were the silent architects of your stability. You exiled them. Now the galaxy is collapsing under the weight of its own ignorance." The chamber erupted again. Some delegates shouted that Rael was lying. Others demanded action. The speaker silenced them with a wave of blinding light. "We will not be undone by one species' withdrawal. We are the Council. We have endured empires, wars, and rebellions. We will endure this." But even as it spoke, the holographic feed showed more failures spreading like cracks in glass. Across the galactic core, energy conduits overloaded. Fleets lost contact with their command centers. Civilizations that had thrived for millennia began to flicker into silence. Outside the chamber, entire corridors of the Council's moon city went dark. The power grid there had been built by human engineers decades earlier. The speaker felt the first tremor of doubt. At that same moment, deep in the outer rim, a scout ship from the Varan Empire was approaching the edge of the solar shield. The captain, a reptilian creature with glinting black eyes, had orders to pierce the human barrier and discover what was happening inside. His crew moved with nervous precision, every movement echoing the tension that filled the ship. "Report distance," the captain commanded. 10,000 units, a crew member replied. "The barrier is fluctuating. We might be able to—" The voice stopped. The lights on the console blinked out. The barrier ahead of them pulsed once, a deep red glow that rippled across the stars like a heartbeat. Then, through the static, a voice filled the bridge. Calm, human. "You are trespassing," the captain froze. "Identify yourself." "This is Earth Defense Network," the voice replied. "Your presence is unauthorized. Leave immediately." Before the captain could respond, the ship's systems began to fail, every control freezing, every engine shutting down. The crew screamed as gravity shifted. The last thing the sensors recorded was the barrier opening for a brief moment, just long enough for the entire ship to vanish into the light. The signal reached the Council hours later, sent by an automated distress relay. There was no sound on the transmission except for one phrase, repeated by a human voice. "Do not return." The Council grew restless. Delegates argued for hours. Fear infected every corner of the great chamber. Trade alliances fractured. Empires accused one another of working with the humans. And through it all, Rael sat silently, watching chaos unfold. When the speaker finally addressed him, its voice was sharp. "You claim this is not war. Then what is it?" Rael looked up slowly. "It's consequence." The speaker leaned forward, its light flickering dangerously. "You speak in riddles." "Humanity built your foundations," Rael said. "They wove their code through your machines and taught your AIs to think beyond logic. They gave you everything you wanted and warned you of everything you ignored. Now, their silence removes the balance they once provided. This isn't vengeance. It's the natural result of dependence." The speaker said nothing. Rael continued softly. "But there's more. Their silence hides something larger. They are not watching idly behind their shield. They are building." The word echoed through the hall like a tremor. "Building! Building what?" the speaker demanded. Rael's eyes reflected the holographic map of Sul, surrounded by its glowing barrier. "Something we cannot yet imagine." As the session ended, the Council's corridors grew darker. Even the moon's atmosphere generators began to fail. Across the galaxy, panic spread. Civilizations that once mocked humanity now begged for reconnection. Cargo ships stopped moving. Artificial stars dimmed. The fabric of interstellar life itself began to crumble. Meanwhile, within the solar system, the truth unfolded in silence. Around the sun, thousands of human-built stations worked in perfect harmony. The Dyson web grew larger each day, connecting every planet with luminous threads of energy. The humans had activated something ancient within their technology, merging their AI systems with the energy patterns of the solar star itself. On Earth, great towers rose from the oceans, harvesting the planet's electromagnetic field. On Luna, vast shipyards produced vessels unlike anything the galaxy had seen, sleek, silent crafts powered by light rather than fuel. Humanity had turned inward not to hide, but to evolve. In the Great Council chamber weeks later, the speaker received a final report from the outer colonies. "Transmission from Vega system," an aide said, voice trembling. "Their entire planetary network has collapsed. They're requesting emergency guidance." "Send assistance," the speaker ordered. "We cannot," the aide replied. "The navigation relays have failed. The path to Vega no longer exists." The speaker's crystal body dimmed completely for a moment. The entire chamber went quiet as the meaning sank in. The galaxy's hyperlane network, the intricate web that allowed civilizations to travel faster than light, was breaking down, and it had been human-built. Rael stood slowly. "You see now, they were not just part of the system. They were the system." The speaker turned toward him. "You think this is irreversible?" Rael hesitated. "Not irreversible, but it will not be undone without them. And they will not return to the council." The speaker's body flickered, its voice cold. "Then we will take back what they built. If we must breach the barrier, we will." Rael lowered his gaze. "And if breaching it destroys us all?" The speaker said nothing. It only looked at the hologram of Sul, its faint glow still unreachable. The silence in the chamber deepened, heavy with fear. Far away, at the edge of human space, a small research satellite caught one final image before all its systems failed. It saw the solar shield expand, pulsing with waves of light. For a brief moment, a massive structure was visible near the sun, a lattice of shining energy stretching between planets. Then the image vanished. In the dark council chamber, Rael watched that image replayed over and over. He whispered to himself, "They're not gone. They're ascending." The speaker turned its light toward him, its voice barely audible. "And if they ascend beyond us?" Rael answered quietly. "Then the galaxy will finally understand what it means to be left behind." Outside, the stars flickered one by one, like dying embers across the void. The great galactic network that had united thousands of worlds dimmed under the shadow of humanity's silence. And in that silence, something vast stirred within Sul, something waiting for the moment when the rest of the galaxy would finally realize its mistake. The chamber of the Galactic Council was carved into the heart of a moon larger than any human nation had ever seen. The ceiling stretched beyond sight, alive with shifting constellations and threads of light that carried the voices of 1,000 worlds. Every seat was filled. Hundreds of alien species sat in silence as the delegation from Earth was escorted inside for the first time in history. The sound of their footsteps echoed. 4 humans walked side by side across the shining floor. They wore no armor, no insignia, no crowns, only plain black suits. Yet something about their calm posture unsettled the assembly. They were the first of their kind to stand before the council since humanity's official recognition as an independent species. At the center of the vast hall, the grand speaker waited. It towered over them, a being of shimmering scales and 6 eyes, each reflecting a different star. "Representatives of Earth," it said, its voice carried through the chamber by invisible resonance. "You stand before the Council of Civilized Systems. You were summoned to answer for your interference." The lead human, a tall man named Elias Ward, stopped at the base of the speaker's dais. His face was unreadable. "Interference?" he asked softly. "We were not aware that defending our planet was considered interference." A low murmur rippled through the assembly. The speaker's eyes narrowed. You destroyed 2 patrol fleets and disabled 3 stations belonging to council members. Do you deny this? Elias met its gaze without blinking. We don't deny it, he said. But we did not start the conflict. Your fleets entered our orbit without invitation. Several alien representatives hissed or growled in outrage. One, a creature made of crystalline plates, rose from its seat and slammed a claw against the table. Humans do not possess authority to deny inspection. Earth is not yet verified for council-level sovereignty. Elias turned his head toward the voice. Then why send warships instead of diplomats? He asked. Inspection is not done with plasma weapons. The creature's glow dimmed. The silence that followed stretched long enough for every species present to feel its weight. Humanity had walked into the lion's den, and somehow they were the ones asking questions. The speaker broke the silence. You stand accused of defying the council's charter. You have restricted access to Sol and refused to share the technologies discovered within your system. Do you understand the gravity of that defiance? Elias smiled faintly. Perfectly, he said. But what the council calls defiance, we call survival. Behind him, one of the human delegates, a woman named Mara, stepped forward. She carried a small device and placed it on the floor. A beam of light projected an image into the center of the chamber, Earth, surrounded by its defense satellites and orbital arrays. The system looked ordinary at first glance, but then the image zoomed out, revealing thousands of luminous threads extending beyond the solar boundary, weaving into a pattern that shimmered like a web across the void. This is what you're afraid of, Mara said. A network built to protect our home. You call it isolation. We call it preparation. The speaker's voice grew cold. Preparation for what? For you, she answered. The uproar that followed shook the hall. Dozens of delegates rose to protest. Some shouted that humans were a threat, others that they were mad. The speaker struck the dais with its staff, sending a thunderous pulse through the floor. Silence, it commanded. When the echoes faded, it turned back to the humans. You are surrounded by powers older than your species' written history. Do not imagine that defiance will grant you safety. Elias nodded slowly. We've heard that before. Every empire that came to Earth said the same thing. The speaker leaned closer, its breath thick with the scent of ozone. Do you truly believe your small world can stand against a galaxy united? Elias met the alien's gaze. We don't need to stand against it, he said. We just need to make sure it falls apart before it reaches us. For a moment, the chamber froze. It was not arrogance in his tone, it was certainty. A quiet, unnerving confidence that rippled through even the most war-hardened delegates. The speaker's 6 eyes flickered with shifting colors. Explain yourself. Elias tapped the device on his wrist. The chamber lights dimmed, and the holographic image expanded into a galactic map. Thousands of colored lines crisscrossed it. Trade routes, communication links, energy flows, all connecting through nodes marked in bright blue. These are your networks, Elias said. Trade, transport, data, all built on technologies your civilizations share. And every single one of those nodes relies on a sublayer of code designed 2 centuries ago. The speaker's tone grew sharper. By whom? Elias raised his eyes. By humans. Whispers rippled through the chamber again, sharper this time, tinged with disbelief and fear. Mara continued speaking. When your ancestors discovered faster-than-light travel, they found human code within their navigation arrays. Your ships, your stations, your defense grids, all of it is built on human logic chains adapted from the old Terran AI designs you bought and copied. You integrated them into your systems without ever understanding their origin. The speaker's light pulsed violently. That is impossible. The council existed before your species learned to split atoms. Maybe your council did, Elias said, but your systems didn't. Mara turned the hologram again. That's why you've never been able to break through the solar shield. It's not just a wall, it's the root command. If humanity wanted to, we could shut down every ship, every beacon, every relay you depend on. The speaker's voice dropped to a low growl. You dare threaten the council? Elias's expression remained calm. No, he said. We're reminding you of balance. For centuries, Earth was treated as a resource, a curiosity, a battlefield for your proxy wars. Now it's time you understood what it cost you to underestimate us. The speaker stared at him for a long moment. Then it laughed, a deep, vibrating sound that shook the air. Empty words. You would never risk total collapse. Even you are not foolish enough to destroy the galaxy you depend upon. Elias took a slow breath. You're right, he said quietly. We wouldn't destroy it. We'd rebuild it. Without you. Every light in the chamber flickered. For an instant, all holograms, communication bands, and translation systems went offline. Silence swallowed the room. Delegates glanced around in panic as the great hall plunged into shadow. Then, just as suddenly, everything came back online. Elias looked up. That was a demonstration. Next time it won't be brief. The speaker's staff struck the ground again, but its voice no longer carried the same authority. Leave this chamber, it ordered. Leave before you what? Mara interrupted. Send fleets? You've already tried that. They never came back. The speaker hesitated, the memory of those lost fleets flickering in its thoughts. Elias gave a final bow, not of submission, but of closure. Earth is not your colony, he said. We are your mirror, and you don't like what you see. He turned and began walking away, followed by the other three humans. The chamber erupted into chaos, voices shouting, threats echoing, lights pulsing in fury. The speaker called for security, but none arrived. The council's own systems refused the command. As the humans stepped out of the grand doors, Mara glanced back. They still think power means control, she said. Elias nodded. They'll learn soon enough. Control belongs to whoever understands the system best. Outside, the human shuttle awaited them, small and quiet compared to the massive alien carriers surrounding it. As it lifted from the moon's surface, the view of the council chambers shrank into the distance. The humans sat in silence for a long time, each aware of what had just begun. From orbit, the council's moon glowed faintly under the starlight. But somewhere deep within its core, lights began to flicker unpredictably. Systems failed one by one, communications scrambled, databases locked themselves. The entire administrative network of the Galactic Council started to collapse from within, triggered by a simple handshake signal embedded in the human envoy's transmission. Back aboard the shuttle, Elias watched the stars slide past. They'll think it's sabotage, he said. Mara smiled faintly. Maybe it is. Or maybe it's just the system remembering who wrote it. The stars outside seemed to shift, aligning into patterns that only human eyes recognized. Coordinates, signals, memories of a world once underestimated. As the ship vanished into the dark between worlds, the council chamber lights went out completely, and across the galaxy the first echoes of humanity's quiet revenge began to spread, unseen, unstoppable, inevitable. The council chamber was in ruins. Where once there had been shimmering light and harmony, now only chaos reigned. The delegates shouted across the floor, their translation systems failing one after another. Holographic feeds flickered, and the grand symbols of unity that once filled the hall now glitched and vanished. At the center of it all, the grand speaker stood motionless, 6 eyes flickering between rage and disbelief. It had seen the humans walk away only hours ago, their faces calm, their tone measured. It had thought them arrogant. It had not realized they were leaving the council not in defiance, but in finality. Communication lines to Sector Delta are down, cried one delegate, her blue scales pulsing erratically. We can't reach our defense fleets? Central systems won't respond, another shouted. It's spreading faster than any virus. The speaker tried to command silence, but even its voice was lost in the storm. The lights dimmed again, casting the once proud chamber in shadow. The galaxy's greatest power, the united governing body of thousands of civilizations, was falling apart. And the cause had come from a single world that most of them had once dismissed as primitive. Across the stars, ships drifted powerless. Gates between systems collapsed mid-transfer. Whole planets, cut off from the Council's network, fell into isolation. For the first time in millennia, the galaxy was silent, and Earth was watching. From an observation post on Luna, Elias Ward stood with his hands behind his back, looking at the holographic display of the galaxy. The lights that represented council systems were blinking out one by one, replaced by faint gray voids. The fall had begun. Behind him, Mara entered the chamber quietly. "It's happening faster than we thought," she said. "Half the central sectors are already offline." Elias didn't turn. "They depended too much on each other," he said. "They forgot how to stand on their own." "We didn't." She joined him at the viewport, gazing at Earth below. The blue glow of the planet shimmered against the darkness. "Do you think they'll ever understand?" she asked. "Eventually," Elias replied. "When they have nothing left to command, they'll remember why we walked away." A signal pulsed on the console beside them. It was weak, coming from deep within council space. Elias pressed a hand to it, and a holographic form flickered into view. The grand speaker itself, its form distorted and trembling. "Human," it rasped, voice breaking through static. You have done something unforgivable." "You will doom us all." Elias stared at it for a long time. "You doomed yourselves the day you built your empire on someone else's code," he said. "We only showed you the truth." The speaker's eyes glowed fiercely. "You think you can exist alone? Without us, without the network, your kind will wither in isolation." Mara stepped forward. "We existed alone for a long time," she said softly. "Long enough to learn what the rest of you forgot, how to survive without permission." The hologram flickered violently, then steadied for a final moment. "The galaxy will not forgive you," the speaker whispered. Elias met its gaze. "We didn't ask for forgiveness. We asked for respect." The image dissolved, leaving only silence. For a long time, neither of them spoke. Outside, the Earth rotated slowly, peaceful and bright, untouched by the collapse beyond its borders. Humanity had sealed its gates. No ships left. None entered. The solar shield remained unbroken, glowing faintly across the system like a quiet sentinel. "Reports from Mars colonies?" Elias asked. "All secure," Mara said. "The new relay system is fully independent. No alien tech, no shared code." "Good," Elias said. "That's how it should be." He walked toward the large observation window again. From this vantage point, Earth looked small, but to him it felt infinite. The place where it all began, and where it all would begin again. Mara leaned against the console. "They'll call us monsters," she said quietly. "The ones who crippled the galaxy." Elias smiled faintly. "Let them. History always needs a villain before it finds its heroes." Down below, on the planet, billions of humans went about their lives, unaware of the full scope of what their leaders had done. To them it was peace. To the rest of the galaxy, it was silence. Far across the void, within what remained of the Council's network, panic spread among the surviving members. They sent fleets to Earth's border, but their ships failed mid-flight. They attempted to rebuild communication chains, but every system that used human-based logic burned itself out. Some accused each other of betrayal. Others begged Earth for help, but no answer ever came. The humans had walked away, not in anger, but in cold, deliberate silence. Weeks passed. Then months. The Council fractured into smaller powers, each trying to hold together what little they could. The galaxy entered a quiet age, one without central command or grand alliances. Trade routes went dark. Empires turned inward, and yet amid the silence, something else began to happen. Planets once ruled by the Council's bureaucracy started to recover. Worlds long ignored found new life, freed from the endless directives of the distant core. Civilizations began to rebuild in their own ways. The collapse the humans caused didn't destroy the galaxy. It humbled it. On Earth, the Human Council met one final time. There were no grand speeches, no declarations of victory, only quiet understanding. Humanity had stepped out of the galaxy's shadow and into its own light. Mara stood on the balcony of the orbital station, watching the stars. "Do you ever wonder what they'll say about us in 1,000 years?" she asked. Elias stood beside her, his reflection blending with the starscape beyond. "They'll say we were the ones who ended the age of arrogance," he said. "The ones who reminded the galaxy that power isn't in control. It's in understanding." A new signal appeared on the display, this one not from the old council, but from a small colony world on the edge of known space. Its message was simple: request for communication with Earth. Peaceful contact. Mara smiled faintly. Looks like they're starting to understand. Elias nodded. Good. Maybe this time we'll talk as equals. The message was accepted. Light spread slowly across the display, one world, then another, connecting not through old systems, but through a new network born entirely of human design. It was careful, secure, independent. The galaxy wasn't being rebuilt, it was being reborn. Elias turned away from the console and looked out once more at the planet below. We didn't walk away out of pride, he said quietly. We walked away to give them the chance to start again. The silence that had once been an act of defiance now became a symbol of peace. As the night deepened, the stars above Earth shimmered with faint signals, new voices, new beginnings. Humanity's shadow stretched across the galaxy, not as conquerors, but as the architects of balance, and somewhere, in the depths of the void where the old council's throne had stood, the last trace of its systems finally shut down. No fanfare, no sound. Only the memory of when humanity walked away in silence, and the galaxy finally understood its mistake.